You know, but what I'm trying to say is all your inventions, your creativity of the multiple recordings, your thing of a guitar, of the electric guitar, of all things you just want to sit down and invent, do this, do that, do other things. I understand.
What, you got a camcorder?
Yeah.
And you look at it as not something, oh, fantastic, or something that's really monstrous. You look at it as something that you created and say, well, I needed to do this, so I made it, now I don't need it, and I go on to something else. You've always thought this way. And they don't. That is very important to their lives because they're into something that they don't think of it that way. They think of it as something, wow, this really created something that I needed, and he did it. So they relate that with you, and you throw it away in a sense, and they don't. They keep it to heart.
I have to figure out how to say it, and I haven't figured that out yet.
It's hard.
I haven't figured it out. But from my body, my mind, it's something that is hard for me to cope with, and it's hard for me to understand. It's terribly hard for me to put this in perspective at all. But I don't have that command of the English language to put it into words, the correct words that I would like to put it in. I can think of vaguely in my head. But first of all, I haven't been able to, it's hard for me to look at that kid playing that guitar up there that's me. And yet I can tell you exactly what I ate for breakfast.
I can understand that.
Well, you know how the kid feels. You know exactly how the kid feels.
Well, I knew how that kid felt that day. I knew that this is Les Paul now at 25 years old or 30 years old. And there he is playing that guitar and everything else, and there's Mary, and we're doing our thing. I can understand that. I see it, okay? But it's hard for me to realize that here I am now. There I am there then. That rotten kid, he's someone else. He is not me.
Correct.
And it's hard for me to realize that that's me. That's who I'm looking at up there, is me.
Well, yes.
Yet I
yes
know
and no.
it. My memory tells me, my God, I can go in. I happen to have such a vivid memory of these particular times that it just seems like anything that you just bump against, I could tell you a whole goddamn story about it.
Or maybe
But it's hard for me to think of that, to think of this, to think of the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, and then see this album come out, and then have the woman at the bank come up to me, that's 65 years old, and then have the clerk at the bank that's 19 come up to me and say her boyfriend plays the guitar, and could I have your autograph? And get a kid 7 years old that wants an autograph, but he doesn't want it for himself, he wants it for his grandchildren. This runny-nosed, freckle-faced kid says, I got a problem with the gal I'm going with. He says, you know how women are, Les. He says, would you sign something for her too? And so I sign it. And he says, see you later. And he walks on down the hill with his runny nose, 7 years old. And I said, God damn, I don't understand any of this. I can't quite get it all in my head. I can't get it straight. I can't get into my head a lot of things. I can't understand where did Chicken Reel come from? Where did Via Candias come from? Where did Tiger Rag, here pussy pussy, here kitty, where did that come from? Where did How High the Moon come from? Where did all these songs come from with their arrangements? Where did playing the guitar with these licks, where did they come from? what made me go that way instead of that way? Why did I do this instead of that?
At the risk of maybe being overly simplistic,
I
think
just
the
don't
creative process
I
has a lot
just
to do
don't.
with it.
I just don't understand why anybody can walk up to me and say, "I want to thank you. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have a job today."
Because they connect
Okay?
with the wide
He's
amount
an
of stuff.
engineer,
Right, exactly.
and he says, "If you hadn't invented that, I wouldn't be here." Well,
Maybe so.
I thank him, but I don't understand. But I don't understand any of this that's happening. It's happening, but I don't understand it.
But maybe because you were the part instigator and the inventor of the basic thing, and it's been expanded afterwards, is they consider that if you hadn't, maybe you wouldn't have been that way, and it may have been something else, but what you did put them in a position that they could do that. That's all. It's just a relationship to, you know.
I just don't.
If nothing else, there's the inspiration of just using your imagination. This is something that kids are not really, I don't think, challenged as much to do these days, and something something that you did as a matter of course.
Some of
You
these
used
kids
you
are
thought
terribly
about
talented.
something, you thought about something hard enough and concentrated on a problem long enough. You had the attention span, you know, and the mechanical wherewithal also, you know, to solve a problem and create your own solution. And a lot of kids really don't have that kind of
Why
ability
me?
to concentrate.
Why me?
Had to be somebody.
Hey.
didn't it?
Just can't answer.
You know, listen, there are certain things I think that, like the creative process, you just kind of, it's kind of a given. You know, in a way,
I
you
think
can
so.
analyze it up to a certain point, but there's a certain other point where you just have to say.
I don't analyze it, but I sure as hell have a problem in handling it because it's heavy.
Well, there's several things. The way
It's heavy.
you.
I sure as hell don't believe it. When someone says something to me, I thank them for it. But it's hard for me to imagine that it's anywhere near as real as they say it is.
And with all due respect, I hope you never do realize it,
I do too.
because that's kind of what makes you so charming. You know,
I'm
is that-
afraid that if
is
I
that
believed it, I would be bad.
your head would be bigger than this freaking room.
That's right.
The hidden
You know.
fantasy is great. And leave it.
Yeah.
Right,
It just,
You know,
I
there's an element of mystery there.
There is.
Enjoy it. Let it ride. Dig it
Right.
for what it is.
Right, so they can't praise you for an electric light bulb or make cigarettes, so you did the other, they praise you for that, so leave it alone. I mean, what, as long as there's a guide there to lead them in some right direction.
they're
who
terribly
cares?
sincere.
Well, of course they're sincere. They're,
Uh,
why would they lie to you? You
you
know,
know,
they're not going to
well,
come and seek you out just
They do
just
seek
for
me
fun.
out.
They're they're
They
intent
just turn
on.
around and come back. When they come back, they're very sincere about it. They grab my hand almost like Wally when he was dying. They
Interesting.
grab it very hard. They mean it.
Yeah.
And they look me right in the eye, and it's for real. And they say some things that are pretty hard to swallow. And when you walk away from that one, like that little boy, 7 years old, come up for his grandchildren, wants the autograph. Or this lady that comes in 95 years old, or the guy strapped to a board and can only blink his eyes, and they prop him up at Fat Tuesdays, and all he does is blink his eyes to applaud. These are hard things to take. These are hard for me to handle without me cracking up. Okay? And when this young person or this person like tonight or last night or whatever it is, when they come up to me and lay one of those things on me, it's terribly hard. It's terribly hard for me to keep straight.
Well, I had a lady.
I don't want to be mushy about it, but I just want to be honest about it. That some of the stuff is, you know, I just say, I'm sure they got me mixed up with somebody else. It just doesn't seem right.
Is that the way you want it to be, or what?
What?
Is that the way you want it to be?
No,
You
it's
got it
not
mixed
the
up with
way I
somebody
want
else.
it to be, because I looked up there at that monitor up there, saw that rotten kid playing that guitar, and I know it is me.
Yeah.
And I know I invented that machine. I know I created that thing. I know that I did all this.
So credit where
But I
credit's
didn't
due.
know that it was all going to come back one day
It all comes
while
around.
I was alive.
It all comes around. It's the same as your music.
Okay?
Well, you know, look at it in the sense of some of the masters who weren't around to see this happen. You know,
Yeah.
who lived their lives and did their creative
Or
thing.
some that it
you know,
should have happened to and never did
and
happen to.
never
yeah,
saw it.
and you know, you enjoyed the fame and fortune the first time around,
I sure did.
but you're here to catch it on the rebound again.
That's hard to take.
You know, well, it's hard to take, but very few guys, very few entertainers are really in a position to do that. You know,
Yeah,
to be able to
usually
do
doesn't
that.
happen, I don't think.
You know, I mean, for whatever your reasons were for retiring, I mean, the fact that you're coming out now has a lot more impact than if you'd been out there doing the personal
Well,
appearance
that's
circuit
true.
for the last 15
That is
years. It wouldn't be anything special.
thought
It wouldn't
about
be any
it.
big deal.
I thought about it, and that by disappearing is different than to stay out like Tony Bennett and keep hammering. You keep hammering, and you never go away, but you never make it.
Hey, if you can afford to do it, great.
Well,
You know, not everybody
I
can
could
afford
afford
to do
to
it.
do it either way, and I chose to just put the guitar away, never to pick it up again, and to go on to other things that I wanted to do in my life.
So what did you do for that 10 years?
I was pretty busy. I had a million things to do and accomplished them. I managed to build my laboratory, and I managed to write
The laboratory.
my laboratory. I managed to do all those things. There were so many things that were so important in my life to do other than to play the guitar.
Well, like what?
Well, I'll get to that. But what was so important to me in putting the guitar down and getting to these other things that I didn't miss the guitar at all. And I felt as though it was important to let the young generation take over for me and play where I left off. And that someone would come along a lot better and just continue to expand and to continue with the times as the times change. I retired, and then after about 10 years, came out of retirement for a few years, went in for heart surgery, and then came out, and then with the decision of a piece of paper, positive and negative, made a choice that I better go back and play the guitar because that's what I was supposed to do. And I looked at my hands and says, well, no one's going to play the guitar with hands like this. I had an x-ray taken, and the x-ray doctor said, forget about it. So I said, well, if I got two fingers, I can still go down there and fool around. I'll see what the public says. And the public accepted it with the two fingers and the difficulty of learning to play all over again. And they had the patience and the kindness to put up with me learning to play with two fingers, struggling around with this thing for mental and physical therapy, okay? And while this is going on, and I'm learning to play the guitar, there's pencils going in that audience, writing articles, cameras going from CNN, from the morning show, from this show, from that show, and within the eight and a half years I've been there, practically every magazine in the country, every newspaper in the country and everything got bigger, 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 bigger. And this little hideaway that was supposed to be for mental therapy and physical therapy started to turn into something different. And people started talking about Les Paul making a comeback. I wasn't making no comeback. I'm just down there to hide away and to get well and stay well, and to slow my process of arthritis down. And that isn't what happened. What happened is that Ron Fermanac comes knocking at the door, and Stephen Peeples is there, and Capitol Records decides to put out an album, and the world starts to change.
A few old tubes in the 8-track and dust
Yeah.
that sucker off.
And that thing was the craziest thing, because they were there, the people from the Smithsonian Institute. They says, we have a list of everything that we want to take. And I said, but if you take that, I won't be able to play my tapes and stuff in my archives. Well, if you want to play them, you can come down to the Smithsonian Institute, and you can play them all you want. If you get where you're just lonesome for some of the things that you have in the archives, well, you come on down there, and the place is yours. I didn't feel as though that was quite right. For some reason or another, and I don't know what it was, many unexplainable things. Why did I keep everything?
Because you're a pack rat.
No. I just kept certain
Takes
things.
one to know one, okay?
Okay, well, I kept certain things
Yeah.
because they were the first.
Mm-hmm.
It's my first guitar.
Right.
It's my first recording lathe. It's the first. That's more than pack rat. It's history.
Right.
It's the first one ever. And it was terribly important. What my mother kept, she was proud of. My mother kept it for other reasons than when I kept my stuff. My stuff was kept for this particular purpose. When Smithsonian Institute says, well, we're ready to back the truck up and take them, I backed out. And I says, I want to keep them here until I'm done with them. But Les, tomorrow it could happen. It's going to happen one day. Nobody lasts forever. I thought about it. I says, well, there's some things I want to do. Some things I want to do. And I may want it. And why was I driven to run all these wires and make this thing all possible to do this? I can't figure any of it out. I just know that for some reason or another, listen, if I wanted to, I could say it's because the man upstairs is running this whole thing. If I wanted to do, I could go on many wavelength there, a trip. But I'm trying to be rational about this thing and say, why? Why did I do what I did? But I did it chronologically, right? I did it linear. I did it in order. And I don't know why. And I don't know why something like Ron Fermanac, yourself, why you people should come knocking at my door, and Capitol Records reluctantly did what they did. Okay?
Drag
They were not
kicking and
for it.
screaming.
Huh?
We had to drag them kicking and screaming.
You had to knock yourself out. We had to knock ourselves out to do it. And after doing it, the final results is that you got a kid on the street that comes up to you and said, if it wasn't for you, Les, there'd be no reason for me to be here. And when this kid comes up so sincere and says that, I don't understand it. Now, if Russ can rationalize it, fine. If you can rationalize it, fine. That don't make me rationalize it. I still have problems with it. I'm not complaining about it. I'm very proud. I'm very grateful. And I know I did it. I know I did it. But I don't understand it.
That's okay.
See?
That's
It's
okay.
hard for me to understand that if there is a God, why he should be now so nice to me is to hand me all these little goodies, to put them all together, to make it possible for me to leave something in this world behind that's that goddamn important. To me, it doesn't seem like there's anything that I did that means anything, other than the fact that I went out and just tried to play the guitar, tried to write a song, was lucky enough to find a gal that was talented, and that she and I were lucky enough, and the people accepted us, that Cap will come along and put the records out, and lucky enough that at that time they didn't say that's garbage and says that's great. Now, that's a lot of luck is involved in this thing, okay? And there's a lot of luck in it right now. I'm very lucky that a kid that says, look, that isn't the kind of music we dig now. They're not digging that kind of music now. I left it tonight. It's anything but what I'm playing.
But that can't be luck.
Oh, there's luck.
Can't be luck.
There
No
is
way.
luck involved
No
in
way.
this thing.
No way.
There might have been luck initially, but I think it's beyond luck
It's
now.
way beyond.
I don't know what it
I'd
is.
agree with you.
It's
You
not
agree?
luck. It's not luck. Because it's already been established. It's luck that doesn't establish something.
Now you got at least 2 generations of people extolling your virtues to their kids, right?
Oh, it's more than that.
You know, at least 2.
Yeah.
You know,
Figure every 5
Guys-
years
guys-
you got to turn over.
yeah, but I mean, you know, the guys your age and my age now have kids who are old enough to really understand. You know, and those are the kids that are starting.
That's scary.
You know, they're coming around, and they see the big picture, not only in terms of the music and see the bands that they like. You know, that they see Slash up there with the big honkin' Les Paul, right? And then they go back the next generation to the stuff that their parents listened to, the Eric Claptons and so forth, and he's playing a Les Paul, and Jimmy Page and all that. Go back the next generation, and it's you.
Well, there is
You know?
another way of looking at it because
And we're all telling each other about it.
Well, how can you, excuse me, Russ, how can you explain this? How can you explain that I go make a guitar and it's 40 years old now? And 40 years old, it's as valuable, or as valuable,
It's
many
more
times
valuable.
more valuable.
Get out of here.
Yeah. How can you explain that 40 years later you don't change a thing and the guitar remains number 1?
because it was done right the first time.
Well,
Even the reissues.
I can't
Some
buy
of the
all
reissues that we saw there were priced at more than 2,500 smacks for a reissue.
well, they're paying any amount of money for
Okay,
it.
but-
$35,000, $50,000, whatever.
Look,
That, huh?
Russ hit it. You guys, it wasn't something that happened like that. There was a lot of research and development that went into it. There was years of research and development
But
that went
there's a
into
million
it. On
other
your
people
end,
making
and on
guitars.
Gibson's end, yeah, but it all
Why aren't they
was a-
right?
Huh?
Why aren't they right? Then they shouldn't have. They should be
I'm
so
just saying, when you add it all up, Russ, it's one hell of a laundry list.
You know what way I look at it, and the way I'm sitting back looking at it is God put disciples on this earth to do certain functions. And in a way,
disciple.
you're a person he put here to lead something, okay? Inventing, music, personality, a writer, musician, and you're a guideline for a lot of people. I look at it that way. I have to look at it that way because that's the way it is. Otherwise, it would be Slash, it would be Guns N' Roses, it could be Aerosmith, but it's not. And they look up to you for many things you have done, and rightfully they should. But you're one of the people out there, amongst others, that they follow.
So that's why these guys like the guys in Aerosmith and Guns N' Roses sell gazillions of records. I mean, they're all multi-billionaires. They sell millions of records, but you know, deep down, they understand what the musicianship is, the role that musicianship plays in that, and it wouldn't happen without that. And when it comes to musicianship and the guitar, you know, they're looking at you. They're looking at guys like you, and they draw their primary inspiration from you. And this is how they make their money. And it's incredibly easy. You know, it's money for nothing. You know, and they realize that, but they also have a much better technical understanding of your contribution to the whole process. So, you know, their understanding is that much deeper. Their appreciation is that much deeper.
Do you think there's a possibility that maybe there was a gap somewhere in music and in the world between the 60s up till now, that there's a gap where the kid grew up not knowing what mom and dad knew and the others knew, and like a missing part of history?
There might have been a time, yeah. I think it's come around though, where kids were obsessed with synthesizers and so forth, and not so much interested in musicianship and whether or not an artist was actually playing an instrument so much as what the artist looked like or what kind of haircut they had or whatever. I think that that just in the last couple of years, it's kind of the pendulum is swinging the other way, where there is an interest, a renewed interest among younger people in people who can actually play an instrument, people who can play an acoustic set of drums and not just punch a keyboard with sampled drums. You know, somebody who can actually play a guitar solo instead of having it sampled or having punching parts of it in the studio when you're recording. You know, for a guitar player to go in and play one solo all the way through and not punch in certain notes, that's like unheard of these days. And what's happening now, though, is that there's kind of a return to a more natural way of recording, more live in the studio type recording, and less concern with perfection than with the spirit and the feeling of it.
It's
and
going
that's the
back
way it was in the
towards what we were
'60s,
doing.
and then before that,
Yeah.
before all of the synthesizers and stuff. I don't have anything wrong. There's nothing wrong with synthesizers, but you know, when a kid thinks that they can walk in a room and plug in a synthesizer and start playing and something's going to come out of it, instead of having some kind of basic understanding of how to write a song and what a song structure is about, and how to work within that framework and to create something within a songwriting framework as opposed to just jamming chords, you know, then that separates the players from the musicians, really.
Yeah.
You know, and I think young kids are really appreciating the musicianship of guys from the '60s, because those guys are really the only guys that are still playing. The guys who came up in the 70s and the 80s, a lot of them just don't play. They're haircuts.
Right now, the nostalgia is very heavy.
Yeah,
Very.
because these cats can play. Eric Clapton is like, he's still God because he's still playing. You know, he's still one of the few guys who is out there who can be called a musician, and that's what you are.